across this gorgeous planet. We are one church, many paths, one mountain, where our mission is what Barbara Marx Hubbard and Dr. Marc Gafni call the planetary awakening in love through a unique self-symphony. And together we declare that the last day of the old face of evolution is honored as the first day of the new face of creation. I am Christina Tahal, the co-executive producer, along with Krista, Josepha, and Kirsten Zohar, and I'm so delighted to be with each and every one of you today. I welcome all the new people. Please do share that you are new in the chat box. We want to hear from you. When you do chat to everyone by checking that your chat settings say all panelists and attendees and not just all panelists. Use the chat function to say hi, to let us know where you're from, and to resonate the Dharma. In one church, many paths, one mountain. We are connected, we are whole, and we are expressions of the entire process of creation. We are activating a new humanity, and we are awakening as a new species, Homo Amor, the fulfillment of Homo sapien. We are a church, a synagogue, a mosque, a temple, a zendo. We are all of it. No one is excluded. Everyone is included. And we come together to attune to the evolutionary impulse awakening within us. Welcome home, everyone. We are overjoyed to be with you today in week 194. Let everyone know about one church, many paths, one mountain. We are doing this primarily through word of mouth. Barbara talked about each of us having and tending a family of 10 here in church, each of us. And I can say that leadership around church is a sacred opportunity. On YouTube, we are one church, many paths, one mountain. On Facebook, we are facebook.com/onechurch.world. And right now we are live on Facebook, so take a moment and share that live link on your Facebook page. After church, we will send you an email to invite your friends and family. Forward that email right after church. Spend time on our website, www.onechurch.world. On the top menu of the home page or the bottom of each page, you will find our membership link. Our books, one of them, the one we're featuring this week, Your Unique Self, The Radical Path to Personal Enlightenment, which will deepen the astonishing mystery and awaken you to the unique soul-making beauty of your path. With that, I give you a little bit of what to expect over this next period. We begin with a Dharma recap, then Dr. Mark sets our intention, then David resonates the evolutionary love code that we are working with, and then we move into prayer, then our sermons, and then when we close, we bring everyone on for our goodbyes. Mark wrote what he called evolutionary love codes. Mark and Barbara often studied the codes together, comparing them with Barbara's own 52 codes for conscious self-evolution. Those codes grew out of their radical commitment over 100 collective years, crystallizing the new story of humanity and, quote, evolving the course of consciousness and culture, which is the source code of love, unquote. Each church is a standalone, and every week's church builds on the week before. One church, many paths, one mountain is radically committed to telling the new story. And here goes my Dharma recap from last week. The urgent need for a new sense-making model in the 21st century, the Homo Amor method. The human being is at the center like we've never been before. We call it the Anthropocene. We need to move from Homo sapiens to Homo amor. We need to take responsibility for our sense making. To do new sense making is actually a function of what we call unique self. Unique self is the narrative of identity which answers the question, who are you? Based on the best integrated, validated first principles from pre-modern, modern, and postmodern thought, woven together into a new whole. Unique self, an irreducibly unique expression of the field of love intelligence with a unique gift to give. Unique self, an incarnation of divinity. When we get to that place, we begin to be able to do unique sense making, to hold our own attention, to be able to move between different perspectives, to step out of ourselves and to fully identify. And that actually is the divine act. Because, after all, where does it all come from? The infinite divine individuates as 7.5 billion humans. The infinite divine feels every one of those humans. Homo amor integrates that into a truth that incorporates more, a truth that holds moral complexity and multiple perspectives, a truth in which no one is smart enough to be entirely wrong and everyone has a seat at the table. And there's a hierarchy of perspectives, that not everything is true. When Homo amor awakens in us, we are powerful in the most beautiful way, not dominating, reductive, exploiting, abusive power over, but actually power in service of, power in devotion to. But we can't confess our greatness without confessing our vulnerability. False certainties are always the source of evil. We arrive at false certainties when we have no notion that we are true. If we don't know that we are true, then it must be true. It is true is some dogma, some political position, some particular social perspective that our friends all approve of and will validate. If we are true, then we can move between the perspectives and we can then begin to integrate and we can then create a larger whole. The script of culture is missing. How do we make it whole? How do we forgive? How do we move beyond intergenerational trauma? We are world citizens, and at the same time, we can actually be part of the community. The melting pot metaphor was a mistake. We don't have to obliterate cultures. We can be in the covenantal destiny of the Hebrew wisdom lineage, of the Christ community, of the Indian, the subcontinent, of being Chinese. We can be in the unique destiny of being the beauty of being a Black American. We're actually gorgeous instruments, unique religions, unique nationalities, gorgeous races in the unique self-symphony. But ultimately, we're part of one people, one heart, one love, which is why any killing, Black or white, is tragic beyond imagination. When we do sense making, it means we sense each other, we feel each other, we develop the ability to go under the space-time continuum and actually access that moment when we betrayed, and we make that moment whole again. We commit outrageous acts of love, not just for our own people, but each of us feels each other's pain and lets our hearts be ripped open, and we commit outrageous acts of love for each other. With that, I invite us to more deeply enter into the holy and sacred space of one church And I turn my word to you, beloved Dr. Mark.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, Christina to Haley. Let me see those eyes. There we are, eyes. Let's find each other's eyes, everyone. Let's find each other like all the way in, right? All the way through. It's so fantastic and gorgeous to be with everyone, right? All the way, everyone. Oh my God. So two things. One is at critical times, we often have other things distracting our attention. So at this moment, I've spent the last 3 minutes listening to Haley's gorgeous Dharma recapitulation and trying to figure out again how to turn off the notifications according to the instructions that Krista and Claire gave me, but I didn't make it. So there's still little pings. So what we're gonna do is let's offer a communal worldwide evolutionary prayer that it pings at the right time. Okay, so for mad blessing for pinging at the right time today. Welcome everyone. It's so wildly good to be here. And at this moment, we wanna set intention and to really understand in some kind of deep and profound way, why are we here? What is this global communion? Right? What is this one church, many paths, one mountain? But if you really want to envision us, it's not church or a synagogue or mosque or secular humanist center. It's a global communion of evolutionary souls. So let's feel into it. What are we? What's this about? First, we want to love each other, but we want to actually ontologize love, which is something that's never been done in human history. So are you with me? Can we hold hands? Let's find each other in the chat box. Let me see if I can find the chat box here. Okay, chat box, chat box. Let's get out of gallery view, chat box. So when we say ontologize, let's find each other in the chat box. Ontologize love. What does it mean to ontologize love? Anyone know what we mean by that? So to ontologize love means ping. So you see that ping? It was a perfect ping. Ontologize love, ready, ping. Okay. So to ontologize love means to actually know that love is real, that it's absolutely, totally real, that it's not contrived, it's not made up, right? It's not a social construction of reality. That love is actually a quality of value that although its expression changes and evolves generation to generation, right? Love is the most real force in cosmos. It's what holds reality together literally in every second. Two, love is intelligent. It's love intelligence. So love is intelligent. Love's also sometimes agonizing. So love is always a move, right, between the agony and the ecstasy. But love is ultimately intelligent, and it's moving towards the ecstasy. It's moving towards depth. It's moving towards goodness. It's moving towards beauty. So that's the second dimension. Love's not neutral. It's not static. Or said differently, love's not just eternal. Love evolves. Love evolves reality. And reality actually is the story of evolution of love. Reality is the story of the evolution of love. It's the story of the evolution of intimacy. And actually, Barbara Marx Hubbard, beloved, and it's so good to have you listening from the place of continuity of consciousness, right? When you first called me, you said, wow, this notion you're talking about, evolution of intimacy, that's core. And the work that's happening at the Center for Integral Wisdom, I realize now is the continuation of the work she said to me, out of my teacher, Bucky Fuller. And if you have Kirsten Zohar, if you can pull up a letter that Barbara wrote about that and put it in the chat box, it's actually a beautiful letter. And what we're doing here at One Church, Many Paths, One Mountain, which is an independent movement, right? It's a program of the Foundation for Conscious Evolution, which Barbara founded. It's a sister of the organization, the think tank, the activist think tank that Barbara and I chair together with Dr. Zach Stein, and Kirsten Zohar is the executive director, and many of the team are board members and leaders in the center, right? Is an activist think tank dedicated to one thing. And I want to go deep with you for a second. Can we break our hearts together for a second in order to break our hearts open? Who's up for that? Okay. Can we just it's like we've never been here before. I'm going to go to the chat box. Is anyone here willing to just break your heart for a second? Can we break our hearts for a second to break our hearts open so that we're not in the rote, that we actually understand what we're doing here? Let's break our hearts open. Okay. So stay with me for a second. Imagine 3 scenarios. And this is a question that one of the founders of the conversation around existential risk, meaning the very risk to our existence that we're faced with in this century, Derek Parfit articulated this question. So imagine you had three options. Peace, there's going to be peace. That's option one. Everyone got that? Someone can even kind of maybe put it in the chat box. Peace is option one. Okay. Option two is, terrible option. Option two is catastrophic risk, right? Pandemics exponentialize, 99% of the world is destroyed. That's option two. Okay. Option three, right? That extra 1% is destroyed. And we go from 99 to 100. Okay. That's option three. Okay. So peace, meaning we're actually able in this moment between utopia and dystopia, to put it in a language that Barbara and I use, where we're actually at this pivoting point. We're standing between utopia and dystopia with Blade Runner, right, and Hunger Games, right, and Mad Max, right, on the one side, genuine dystopian visions, or Avengers, in which there's a Thanos-like intervention. And I'm using popular culture to refer to genuine options being discussed actively today behind the scenes in the world. In the Avengers, Thanos destroys half of the world in order to solve the problem of population and climate control. And it's the Avengers who challenge Thanos, but Thanos makes a lot of sense. And the Avengers don't even have a narrative, right, a set of first principles that allow them to challenge Thanos, right? Let me just check in the chat box. How many people saw the Avengers and know what I'm talking about when I talk about Thanos? Anybody? Let's check out the Avengers. We got a yes, we got a no, we got a no, we got a yes, we got a no, we got a yes and no. So check it out, Raquel. Check it out, okay? Right, it's unbelievably important. Simona, check it out, right? In other words, popular culture reflects often the deepest movements, right, in the evolution of consciousness. The Avengers is a Marvel movie owned by a lovely gentleman who I have an occasion to talk to in life named Avi Arad, who owns Marvel. And the Avengers movie, there's two movies. The two final Avengers movies are about the Avenger heroes taking on Thanos. Thanos is facing existential risk. He's aware of existential risk. He says the whole world's ignoring what's really going on, and he decides to get the stones that will allow him to essentially in 1 second destroy half of the world's population, kill everyone for the sake of the larger good. And that's his moral equation. The Avengers feel in their bodies that's wrong. We can't do that, but they can't quite articulate why. And so there's this great battle that takes place. It's actually quite an important movie if you actually read between the scenes, and it actually says more than even its creators intended, as is often true in popular culture. So stay with me for a second, okay? So I'm going to go back to Derek Parfit as we set our intention here. You ready? As we set our intention here. And Krista and Kirsten and some of the other team, we're going to be working on trying to get rights to use little movie clips so we can actually look at a movie clip together and actually take a look at it. It's an incredibly important conversation. It's about existential risk. And sometimes the conversation's right in front of us, we can't see it. So stay with me for a second. So we got three possibilities, and someone can go back in the chat box and let's put it back. We got possibility one, peace, right? We somehow, right, we evolved the source code, and we're going to talk about how could that happen, because it's not happening naturally. But if something changes dramatically, and about that dramatic change, that up-leveling, that evolution of love, that evolution of the source code of culture and consciousness that begins with what we just called ontologizing love, that is what One Church, Many Paths, One Mountain is committed to. That's who we are, right? We are revolutionaries, and we're Marxist revolutionaries, and we're capitalist revolutionaries, and we're about a system beyond those two, right? And we're about the whole thing. And we're deep in this deep conversation about how we can actually get to peace. So I'm going to get back to that in a second. So peace was option one. Okay, that was option one. Remember peace? Option two was, thank you, Krista. Option two was catastrophic risk, right? 99% destroyed, right? And then option three was, right? So that's what Kirsten meant. Option three was, let's just write down option three was the last 1% is killed, right? So that's existential risk. We move from catastrophic to existential risk. Does everyone get the three options? One is there's a breakthrough. There's an evolution of culture and consciousness, and there's actually a genuine breakthrough. And we actually recalibrate reality, and we take reality off of, right, its self-terminating direction, off of its exponential growth curve, right, off of its extraction model. But how are we going to do that? It's not going to work. There's no ordinary path towards that. And Derek Parfit didn't have a path. And Nick Bostrom, who talks about existential risk, doesn't have a path. And all the great derivative thinkers who talk around existential risk aren't presenting a path. They're outlining the problem and having piecemeal solutions, they're all important. There's all sorts of things we can do, right? But those individual things won't get us there. So for example, Toby Ord talks about the Center for Biological Terrorism, right, that's supposed to work on bioterror in the world, that has the amount of staff, 4 people, at the approximate amount of funding it would take to run a McDonald's. That's all. That's the entire, it's completely understaffed. So of course it's not going to do anything. So of course we need to up-level it, right, to be able to be an effective organization. So those are important piecemeal things to do. And Toby Ord, in his new book, Precipice, on existential risk, talks about it. And Ord is a student of Derek Parfit. Derek Parfit was his doctoral advisor, and that's important. That's important. But now stay close for a second. We're setting our intention, okay? Let's go close. Let's go deeper in. So Derek Parfit points out, which is worse, right? The move from 1 to 2 or 2 to 3. I want to make sure everyone gets that. 1 to 2 means peace or 99% of the people killed. That's 1 to 2. Everyone get that? Who gets that? Who gets that? I want to make sure we get it. We don't lose each other. So 1 to 2 is from peace to losing 99% of the people. That's 1 to 2. And then 2 to 3 is losing the extra few people from 99% to 100%. That's 2 to 3. Does everyone got it? Everyone doesn't get it. I want no one's outside the circle. If anyone doesn't get it, I'll say it again. Does everyone got a no? Is there a no there any place not clear? Right, Dawn, you got it? Fantastic. Everyone got it? Okay, fantastic. Okay, so wow. So Parfit makes the brilliant point, right, that although it's counterintuitive, from a certain perspective, 2 to 3 is much worse than 1 to 2. Everyone assumes, right, it's the other way, right? Everyone says, right, you got peace to losing 99% of the world. That's obviously far greater than just losing the few more people. But stay close to this, okay? And I want to really feel this with you. It's so deep. It's beyond profound, and it's beyond gorgeous. And it's what keeps me awake at night, and it keeps me awake during the day, and it gives me energy when I have no energy. Right? So stay with them. This is why we're here. This is why we're gathered together. Right? This is why we're a revolutionary global communion. Okay? So stay with us. And I had a dream. Barbara spoke to me last night, a dream. We were talking about, wow, maybe we should rename one church as Global Communion like we originally did. So I was just thinking about that, right? That probably just drove Kirsten and Krista crazy, okay? But I just wanted to share that dream, okay? But we're a global communion, right? We're a global communion of evolutionary souls, okay? Okay? Oh my God, we're a global communion of evolutionary souls. So let's just kind of feel this deeply for a second, okay? When you go from 2 to 3, when you lose the last 1%, what have you done? And Kirsten, just give me a yes that I just can feel you. I can't do this without Kirsten. Can I feel you, KZ? There she is. Okay, thank you, love. Deepest bow. Deepest bow. We're sending Kirsten healing energy. She's not feeling so great today. Okay, listen to this. When you go from 99 to 100, you lose all the future generations. Does everyone get that? And that's what Thanos in the Avengers movie, right, was doing. Right? Thanos was basically saying, I'm going to destroy. And in the end, he says, I'm going to destroy. He starts with destroying half the world in the first movie, Avengers, the second to last movie. And then the last movie, he says, I'm going to destroy the whole thing and we're going to start again. Right? But he destroys all future generations. So when you destroy all future generations, do you get this? You're destroying all of every future soul, every future love, every future beauty, every future truth, right? Every future possibility. It's taken us thousands and thousands of years. There's 10,000 generations of human beings. And there's a covenant between the generations. Okay, you with me? Right? There's not collective guilt, we said last week, but there's collective responsibility. And in every generation, right, that generation is responsible for its evolution of consciousness. So every generation is responsible for its evolution of consciousness, which is the evolution of love. But we're not an ordinary generation. So I've got to tell you the truth, right? Right? So that's our covenant. I'm going to tell you the truth. We're not an ordinary generation. We're at a phase shift, the likes of which the world has never seen before. We're at a new moment in history that's never seen before. Carol, what would be the point, right, of that level of destruction? Well, see, here's the thing. The possibility of existential risk, that is to go from the 99 to 100%. The 1%'s gone, everything's gone, which destroys all future generations. So all of the excellence, right? We've just gotten to the point where the feminine is emerging, right? With the gorgeous emergence of the feminine. We're just getting to the place of voting, right? And just the beginnings of democracy, which is barely working. We're just getting to the place of, right, this understanding of universal human rights. These are all new. We're just getting to the place that we can actually move reality forward by knowing how to have a conversation with each other. We're just getting to the place where actually we don't judge people based on the content, right, of the color of their skin. We judge them by the content of their character. We're not doing identity politics. It's not about the tribe only. We've moved beyond the tribe to the nation. Do you get what a big deal that is? You know what? Who gets what a big deal it is? Nationalism is a big deal, right? Who knows about the Rwanda Genocide? How many people here know seriously about the Rwanda Genocide? Anybody? Who really understands? Who's read about the Rwanda Genocide? Give me a chat box. Let's find each other, right? Rwanda Genocide, right? 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 In 100 days, 800,000 people killed, not by guns. Someone fill it in, right? How'd they get killed? Carol, how'd they get killed? Machetes. That's right, machetes, right? Now, why did that happen? Because, sorry to the liberal world here, it happened because there was no nationalism. When we cried against nationalism in the world, we don't understand it. Nationalism means there's a nation, and the nation is beyond the tribes. Does everyone get that? There's a nation that's beyond the tribes. And it's exactly what's happening now is we're beginning to have this retribalization. We're losing the nation. We're going back to the tribes. Brown tribes, yellow tribes, black tribes, right? Jewish tribes, right? And no, yes, there's, we talked about it last week, of course. There's gorgeous legitimacy, right, to my unique identity, right? And I've got my unique self-instrument and the unique self-symphony. In that sense, tribes are important. But the tribes have to be part of the nation. And if the Hutus and the Tutsis had been part of a Rwandan nation, meaning had nationalism, the evolution of consciousness, taken effect, that whole massacre wouldn't have happened. Does everyone get that? Wow. Like, wow, right? And then nations have to be part of a larger global communion of evolutionary souls. And there's got to be a larger global communion, right? But this whole set of ideas we're talking about, these are all new. These are all new. We haven't gotten there. We're just at the beginning of this great experiment where humanity can unfold the most gorgeous truth, beauty, literally utopia on earth. Levels of God consciousness, levels of divinity, we can literally participate as infinity intended. We as finitude, we literally participate in the evolution of God. We literally participate in the evolution of value. There's more value. We can make more godness in the world. That's one of the deepest structures of the interior sciences and the lineage that we're unfolding here. And the deep interior sciences that infinity loves, says William Blake, the productions of time. Infinity loves finitude, and there's some way in which infinity becomes more through finitude. In other words, manifestation, reality, isn't an accident. It wasn't just divine love, right? It was divine self-love. And we're part of that divine self-love, right? And infinity individuates as Christina Tahel and as Lady Kristen, as Shahati, and as, right, Lirazi, right? And as Suzette, and as David, right? And as Mark, and as Christina, and as Ken, and as Derek Parfit, right? And as, right, Toby Ord, and as Oriana, and as Utz. So infinity individuates through each of us and then becomes mystically, mysteriously, but it's interior science, becomes more. There's actually more. There's more God, there's more good, there's more truth, there's more beauty. So if we go from peace, right, to losing 99% of the people, that's a horrific tragedy, it's catastrophic risk of the worst kind. But if we go from 99 to 100, right, existential risk, we've destroyed all of the futures, right? All of the God to come that's ours to manifest and to incarnate. And we violated the covenant between the generations. 10,000 generations came before us. And each one was a huge momental leap in consciousness. Sometimes it was technological consciousness. So a huge leap in, for example, human technology was clothing. right? Human spacesuits, the spacesuits that allow us to inhabit different parts of Earth. Information technology, much later. Infotech, biotech, nanotech, right? In our moment. But there's been this gap. There's been this increase in exterior technology, but the increase in interior technology hasn't kept up, especially in the last 200 years. In the last 200 years, after the great leap of the Renaissance, great leap in interior technology, the great leap of the story of modernity, there's been a lagging, right, a collapsing, right, of the evolution of interior technology. Right? The new story hasn't been told. We haven't integrated the new sciences and the old sciences, exteriors and interiors. We haven't told a story that's equal to our power. So as the atom bomb exploded in 1945, and my beloved evolutionary partner, Barbara, asked President Eisenhower, right, what's the meaning of our power? He said, I don't know, young lady. Right? So we don't have a story of our power. We don't have a narrative of power. We don't have a narrative of identity. We don't have a universe story. And when you read Nick Bostrom, blessings, brother Nick, you're doing awesome work. And Toby Ord, fantastic job, right? There's no story. When you listen to people like my colleague, Sam Harris, right? Great information, great job, but no story, right? What's missing is what we want to call here at Many Paths, One Mountain, one church, many paths, one mountain, global communion for evolutionary souls, right? What's missing is first principles that actually come together and cohere, right, as a new story, right? And when you don't have a shared narrative of first principles, and first principles are what we've called Dharma. And what are first principles? Meaning the best integration. Go real slow with me, okay? Anyone who wants to write this would be awesome, just so I'll help us all keep clear. So first principles are the best integration of all the streams of wisdom. Let me get more careful, right? First principles are the best integration of all the validated insights in all the streams of wisdom in the traditional pre-modern period, meaning till the Renaissance, in the modern period, right, from the Renaissance till, let's say, the 1960s, right? So all of the great traditions of pre-modernity, all of the deep spiritual traditions, right? They're validated insights based not on dogma, but based on deep experimentation in the interior sciences. Those shared insights, right, of all the great wisdom traditions, that which they shared, the universal principles they weren't even aware of, right, that they all shared, that we're actually able to extrapolate. Wow, that's pre-modern insights. Then all of modernity, all of the insights of modern science and molecular biology, right, and evolutionary emergent science and systems theory and complexity theory, right, all of that, all of evolution, right, all of that emergence, right. So the validated insights from every stream of wisdom in the pre-modern period, in the modern period, and then the validated insights of the postmodern period, which my colleague Jordan Peterson misses, right? He kind of says postmodernism is the source of all evil. Not quite. Postmodernism has very important insights. So we gather those insights. We weave them together, right? Let's weave. Can we weave together? Let's weave. We weave them together. 20 hours a day. We read up, right? We weave them together, swallow it whole. We weave them together into a new whole, a new configuration of intimacy, meaning parts come together as a new whole, and that new whole is the new story. Okay, that's the new story. So that new story, right, is based on first principles. So in the entire conversation around existential risk, and the entire conversation around the challenges of today, there's no first principles. There's no first principles, right? A colleague of mine wrote the other day, we need to coexist, right, with all the inanimate world, and we need to coexist with the animate world, and we need to coexist with each other. Thank you. What does that mean? You can't coexist without first principles. You can't coexist without a shared story, right? You can't coexist without a shared narrative. Now, I want to tell you something wild. Then we're going to go to David, and we're going to resonate the code, right? And then we're going to do Amor. We're going to chant, and then we're going to pray. And then we're going to hear from Barbara, okay? And then we're going to do the next stage, right? We're going to do sense making, first principle sense making at 11 o'clock. If you're with us, it's unbelievable. But I want to tell you something like shocking, okay? Right? Because sometimes you can't see what's not there, but you have to see what's not there to realize what's actually going right and what's going wrong. So if you're up for it, I'm going to just find each other in the chat box. Who's ready? Can we just imagine together? Can we just use imagination? Yeah, who's up for imagination now? Let's just do let's be imagination. right? The human being is Adam. Adam means, right, ground and imagination, right? So the human being, Adam, is both Adam and Eve together in the original tradition. It's not man or woman. It's the original human being. The original human being is the ground, and also Dimayon. Adam means imagination, so we're homo imaginus. Okay, so yes to imagination. We got a yes? Yes to imagination? Let's dream. Let's imagine. So I want to imagine with you a scene that you didn't see. And I was dreaming about this scene all through yesterday. And I tried to share it with my friend Warren Farrell and with Sally and with Liz just to get this dream. So here's a dream. Here's what didn't happen. Are you ready, everybody? Let's imagine what didn't happen and bring it into being. It's December of 2019. And you flip on CNN and Fox News and Der Spiegel, right, in Germany, right, with newspaper. You flip on channels all over the world and you realize there's a global summit. It's before Christmas, maybe on Christmas, December 2019. All the world leaders have gathered. And based on advanced tracking technologies, which have actually been funded, and parentheses, these technologies have not been funded, they're not available yet, but they could be, but they've just been ignored. So based on advanced technologies, which allow us to immediately sequence new viruses that are unknown to us. So based on this advanced technology, which could be easily funded, we actually are completely aware that the COVID-19 coronavirus is on the way. And all the world leaders have gathered, right? And they shake hands, because we can shake hands at that moment. And they literally hold hands and they say, wow, we're one world. Can you imagine that? Who can see that? Can you see that? Right? It's Christmas Day. It's 2019. We're one world. We're one love. We're one heart. We're one humanity. And that which unites us is so much greater than that which divides us. And each of the leaders gives a short talk and a blessing. And they've been together for 2 days. And on Christmas Day, they say, a pandemic is approaching and we've got this. We've got this. We're going to align with Mother Nature. And we understand that the pandemic doesn't stop at individual states in the United States, and it doesn't stop at the border between Belgium and Holland, and it doesn't stop at the border between Germany and, right? It doesn't stop in Asia, and it doesn't stop in Wuhan. What this pandemic reminds us is that we're one world and one heart and one love. It's beyond boundaries. The pandemic is holding, right, no boundary consciousness, and we're ready. And we're ramping up our hospitals, and we're preparing masks. Right? And we're going to share resources. And we're going to stand together as the world never has in the history of humanity. We're going to stand together, right, on the side of love. Right? We're all on the side of love, and we're standing against unlove, not against each other. And we transcend ethnocentric consciousness. And we expand our circle of intimacy. And in that moment, something fundamentally dysfunctional in reality, this global intimacy disorder, is healed in a way that it never has been. It's like that moment when we saw a picture of the earth from outer space and we realized it was one world and one love and one heart. We see the global leaders together and our hearts and minds. Who can see this? Who can see this? Can anyone see this? If you can see this, give it a yes. If you're imagining it, who can imagine? Let's imagine this into reality. Let's imagine this into reality, right? We've got to imagine, we're homo imaginus. We're going to imagine this, and we're literally going to make this true now. We're going to make this true. Okay. I remember when I was growing up, I saw a Twilight Zone, and the father in the Twilight Zone, right, lost. He's a boxer. He lost the match, but then his son wishes, right, that he had won, and he makes it true. That the whole story is reimagined backwards. So I can't promise you to reimagine this backwards, but this is a memory of the future. Let's actually be evolutionary mystics in this moment, evolutionary activists, right? We are the revolution. Let's imagine a memory of the future. That's what we're doing here. As mystics, right? We're articulating, right, a memory of the future. So imagine that, right? Imagine that's a different world, isn't it? A different world. So I'll tell you something, in the United States, based on that, had we done that in the United States, we probably would have lost not 120,000 people, but 1,500. Does everyone get that? Right? 1,500. Wow. Right, 500,000 people have died around the world, catastrophic risk. but none of them needed to. And the economy is in shambles. Just in the United States, there are 50 million people unemployed, worried long-term about how to put food on the table. That's what it means being concerned with the economy. It's not concern for multinational corporations evading taxes. It's concern for people being able to put food on their table. So can we feel that? So we are those leaders. We actually are. Now, what's missing? What doesn't get us there? We don't have first principles. The reason there was no meeting is because, and I've been screaming this, and Barbara's been screaming it for a decade, and I mean that with complete sweetness, because we're going to scream it even more, right? Gently, in whispers, and in an invitation, and in mad love. And here's what we've said, and you've heard this here every week. We've said it one way or the other. A new story creates new global coherence, because a new story is a new configuration of intimacy, right? If we're not part of a story, if we're not part of a shared story, we can't actually create global coherence. And so what we actually just witnessed in the last 4 months is an utter failure of global intimacy, with a global intimacy disorder writ large, which translated in an utter breakdown in global coherence. But you can't evoke global coherence, right, just by talking about existential risk, or just by talking about, right, you can only evoke it by evoking a new story. And a new story has to be based on new first principles. Wow. Wow. Right? Can we see that now? So what Parfit writes is that when we look back, if we survive this period, right? Is that right? History is going to look back at this 100 years. Maybe it's this 20 years, maybe it's 30, maybe it's 10, maybe it's 150. We don't know. History is going to look back at this time. If we survive, they're going to say, those people stood up. Those people were heroes. Those people stepped out of the ordinary. Those people stepped out of the regular. Those people stepped out of the little businesses they were running to make their lives work. Those people stepped out of their narrow narcissism and their egocentricity, which is all about, what do I enjoy doing today? Well, I love what you enjoy doing today, but actually you have privilege, sister. You have privilege, brother, right? Let our love change the world, right? Let our love change the world. Let's love each other so much. And the deeper we love each other, the more our love has to change the world, right? And the deeper, right, the most intimate loves we have, right, that are hidden in the deepest places of Goddess's heart, have to explode with each other. And it's got to be seen and enacted on the stage of reality. Let our loves, right, love the world open. That's who we are. That's our intention. I wanted to set our intention here, right? Because we sometimes lose track, right? We do sense making, but we're not a commentary on public events. And we're not just new age spiritual inspiration or fundamentalist spiritual inspiration. We're weaving the new story. We're articulating the first principles, right? We are the revolution. We got to be pure, and we got to love each other. And it's the way we love each other and the way we love reality open with radical activism. So I want to just ask everyone, I'm going to do this with your permission, Kristen. You're going to repeat it later with your permission. I just want to put in the chat box right now, if we can, the way to join church. So I want to just ask everyone who's on the call now, just join, right? Don't just be here. Your being here is gorgeous, but join. Help us do this. No one's paid, right, in any substantive way, right? I'm not, okay? So if everyone could just do $25, $50 a month to actually become part of it, right? Take that step. Right? Barbara always talked about this. Take that step. Make this yours, not mine. It's not Christina. It's not Barbara's, right? It's not Krista's. It's not Shat's. It's not Claire's. It's not Uch's. It's not Oriana's even. It might be Oriana's, okay? Right, Mosa, right? We're in this together. Let's do this, right? Put that link there again, right? Let's actually, we got to be a unique self-symphony. And let's just keep putting the link there. So like by the end of church today, 50 more people, 100 more people, 200 more people, right? 400 more people have joined to allow us to take the next step, to turn the church into a podcast, right? To turn, the global communion for pioneering souls, the global communion for evolutionary souls, into a cascading wave of outrageous love that's unstoppable, that takes us out of our ordinary routine, that shatters, right, the beauty and elegance and delight of our tender narcissism, right? So blessings for all of us for our tender narcissism, right? No shout, no critique, right? We're all tender narcissists. So let's break out of that. Let's love it open like we never have before, right? A cascading wave, right, of outrageous love. Wow. 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 So first give us some more, and then David, you're going to give us the resonant code, because David, we've missed David madly for 2 weeks. There's been people swooning in the streets waiting for David to come back. So David's back. So first, let's actually play Amor to hold this, and maybe we can join church as we're playing Amor, right? And then David, give us the code, and we'll go the next step. Amor, 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 amor. Amor, it's insights. Thank you, Shahati and Holy Company. It's insights are aligned with love. David, thank you, Shahati. David, we're swooning for Shahati and David together. David, resonate the code. We've missed you, love. Take us inside. Blow us open. Look at that shirt. That's nice. That jacket's nice. Wow. Okay, take us
Mark,
in, brother.
Amen, Mark. Thank you so much. So beautiful. Confronting this catastrophic risk, you're inviting us into our greatness. I've missed you all. I've missed you, Mark. I've missed the whole group. You know, I was climbing a mountain last weekend, a 14,000-foot mountain in Northern California, and I was thinking about all of you. And, you know, I was feeling this desire to move up the mountain, this 14,000-foot mountain. I was looking at the summit. Every time I looked at the summit, I felt called forward. Every time I looked back, my heart was broken open with outrageous beauty. And I was thinking about all of you this whole time, and there was a point, maybe about 12,000 feet up, and I was just paralyzed with fear, right? Paralyzed with doubt. Can I do this? Is this something that I can actually do? Do I have that greatness within me? Do I have that power within me? And Mark, and as I've told you, during those moments, I remember you saying, you know, the past 10 years we've been working together, and every time I felt contracted, afraid, doubtful, you told me, and you loved me first and foremost. You showered your love on me. And you told me, move one more step forward. One more step towards my greatness. And so in those moments when I was on the mountain, afraid that I was going to fall off, I mean, it was a treacherous slope and everything, I heard your voice saying, take one more step up that mountain. And I looked up again at the summit, and I felt called and allured to continue towards my greatness. And I eventually stepped up into that summit, pulled myself up, and for about 10 minutes, I just broke down. My heart broke open into this ecstasy of tears, of joy, of laughter, of relief, and everything in between. So great mystery. And we're doing this together. We're moving up that mountain together, looking for revealing our greatness as a global communion of evolutionary pioneers. So as I read this code, as I resonate this code, let's feel the resonance within our own being towards our greatness. This week's evolutionary love code. More than confessing their sins, every human being is obligated to confess their greatness. Every human being is obligated to live their greatness. Obligation, duty, honor, and nobility are not social constructions of reality. Obligation, duty, honor, and nobility are real. Your greatness is your deepest heart's desire. To confess your greatness is to confess your deepest heart's desire. And we must also confess our vulnerability. To confess our greatness without our vulnerability is to lie to ourselves. To confess our vulnerability without confessing our greatness is to deny God. And I turn my word back to you, Dr. Mark.
Oh my God, that was so beautiful, David. Right? Can everyone just give David, whoever felt David's beauty, just blow him away a yes. Right? So everyone, you can just feel everybody just loving him up. Right? Everyone feel that? Right? Yay. Right? And yay, right? And I just want to say with David, with your permission, right? Beautiful man, right? We've become one of the reasons we don't do first principles. It is because we become consumers. We jump, right, from thing to thing, right? So Dave and I, we've been together for a decade, and a whole bunch of us have been together for a long time. And we stay with each other and we work through, right? And sometimes there's contractions and it expands, but it's ever always deeper, right? And we love each other with integrity. And that's what it means. So let's just join hands. Let's just hold hands. I mean, so beautiful, so gorgeous. And it's so good, right, to be together, right, in every possible and gorgeous way. So Christina, Amelon, to Haley, right, let's hear Barbara on this code, right, on confessing your greatness, right? I'm super excited, Barbara, to hear you, right? Barbara and I talked about literally right before she made this, right before this week when we actually did this church, we talked about this in depth on the phone. Right? And then we went into church. So I'm just super excited to feel and hear Barbara. Let's just welcome Barbara Marks Hubbard.
Part of confessing our greatness is clearly being able to confess our prayer. Because what is that prayer guiding us toward? I'm reading every single one of them. It's guiding us towards the expression of our unique greatness. And so it's very interesting to think that what we need and what we feel we lack, when we pray for it, we are actually praying as God in us that is obliging us for greatness. And I'm speaking now of being obliged for greatness right at this moment of evolution. Now, it was always true to some degree, but why is it so true today that everybody's uniqueness and unique greatness is needed? I think it's because we're at the point of evolution, the first time in human history that we've been aware of this, that we, at our turn on the spiral, according to how it goes in our lifetime, not in hundreds and hundreds of years from now, in your life and my life, how it goes, it either very quickly goes down, not just to personal devolution, but to climate breakdown, to species extinction, to the seas being polluted, to the fact of our very species being threatened by our lack of expressing our unique greatness, our unique need, our unique gift, our unique genius, however you want to put it. So if it's true that the world could go down so fast by us, every one of us not expressing our greatness, first of all, I'd like to see the importance of the Church of Evolutionary Love, or the One World Church, or the Church of Evolutionary Infinite Creativity, all the things that we may say ourselves. I see our church actually arising at the tipping point of evolution. I understand why we didn't arise earlier, because people really didn't know. They put it up to God, they put it up to the emperor, they put it up to the president. Now that we know, we cannot look to any of those I would say, power centers, we are then being forced to look at the inner power within ourselves. We have to confess our greatness. And whose greatness is it that we're really confessing? At this little tipping point, for the very first time, that we're saying as a church, as a community, as members of the human species, as anyone, anywhere on earth who yearns to express their greatness, what we're really doing, as I understand our greatness, is everyone is a unique expression of the divine process of creation that it took to all these billions and billions of years, from single cells to multi-cells to animals to humans, to 5 mass extinctions before we got here, to the threshold of a 6th mass extinction right now, with our generation being the one that has to wake up collectively. And I remember, I think I've said this before, when I first read Teilhard de Chardin, I noticed that evolution seems to be rising to greater consciousness, more freedom, more complexity and love from single cell to us. And then I noticed that that impulse is my desire for more consciousness, more freedom, and more love. So I began to realize, oh my God, evolution is me desiring this. I'm not desiring it outside of evolution, I'm desiring it as evolution. And if I'm desiring it as evolution, what power do I actually have? If I know that I am evolution desiring greatness, freedom, love, order, kindness, blessing, if I know that I am evolution desiring this, does that empower me to desire with a passion far greater than my own individuality? Because I remember that when I first got hold of this, when my brother Lewis, who was of a totally different kind, he was in the oil business, and he thought the important thing was to go and play tennis and get as many girls as possible. So I told him about conscious evolution, and I told him that I had discovered through Teilhard de Chardin that there is a pattern in the process, and I seem to be going in the same direction as the pattern. I want consciousness, I want freedom, I want more love. And I asked him how he felt, and he looked completely stunned and said, do you think, are you actually saying, Barbara, that you are affecting evolution? You must be crazy. In other words, he couldn't see that he too was an expression of evolution. So I think one of the great jumps of our lifetime at this tipping point is the discovery of evolution, discovery of the story toward greater consciousness, freedom, and order and love. And at the same time, the discovery that you and I are that. So when we're praying, we are, in some sense, God praying for the Godhood that God has given to every one of us. And so then let's just go through and imagine that our generation right now, that this church is essential to gather us together so that we have the boldness and the presence and the greatness to yearn for the evolution of ourselves and our entire species through this breakdown point. What do we see here? How in the world are we going to break through? What would be a future of greatness? What would be the future of humanity if we actually were great, every one of us, to give our total gift? Well, you know, there's a phrase which I've quoted many times I happen to love. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He tramples on the vintage where the grapes of wrath. The only visions that equal to what we could become have been in our spiritual traditions, usually after death. And it's interesting to just imagine that the so-called death of our species, which is an implicate problem that we're facing due to the challenge of evolution itself, means that we have to be able to imagine what it would be like if everything we know we can do worked. And we have to be able to put it together as God would put it together through us. And so I will just conclude this by saying I can envision a society that we are initiating right here and now to heal the earth, to free people from hunger, disease, and war, and to begin the vast expression of the depth of our inner space as individuals and of our outer space as being born into a universe of billions of galaxies. In that sense, our crisis is a birth. That's dangerous, but natural, whereby we can heal our own body and the planetary Earth. But that is the very beginning, I would say, of us becoming a new species. And in church, we call it Homo Amor, and I call it Homo Amor Universalis. That is to say, loving the earth, healing the people, freeing the people, and then saying, hello, we're being born as a universal species. And with that, and with turning to Marc as a member of this Homo Amor species, I turn my word to you, Marc.
It's a beautiful moment. So we're now finishing church. We haven't done prayer yet. This is about where church finishes about 11 o'clock. And we're now going to move into first principles, and we're going to end first principles with prayer. Okay? We're going to end first principles with prayer. In general, we're trying to figure out how to do the 10 to 11 and 11 to 12 in terms of timing. So usually we'll do prayer, right, in church itself. But today we're actually going to end first principles with prayer. Okay? So, wow. So let's just breathe. Can we breathe for a second? Can we breathe for a second? Who's breathing? Who's breathing for a second? Okay, can we breathe? Cha, okay? Cha. Cha. Right? Let's just find each other if we can for a second in the chat box. And just to be together. Okay, I'm gonna find the chat box here for a second. Right? Yeah. There we go. We're in the chat box. Right? Can we feel each other? Let's just feel each other. Right? Who can feel each other? Let's just feel across the world. Now let's breathe together. Let's feel together. Let's feel together. Right? The universe feels, and the universe feels love. And we're going to do first principles now. The first hour, one church, many paths, one mountain. And the second hour, first principles and sense making. And of course, the two move together somewhat. As I said, in general, we're going to do prayer in the beginning. But today I want to actually emerge out of what Barbara said and head into this next piece. All right, not long. And we'll conclude with like the most gorgeous prayer we've ever done, and to actually find first principles. Because first principles are everything. There can't be global coherence without first principles. We can't heal the global intimacy disorder without first principles. We can't avoid the Thanos scenario in Avengers 2, described by Derek Parfit at Oxford, and by Nick Bostrom at Oxford, and by Toby Ord in his new book. Right? We can't avoid, right, existential risk, or what we began to use, right? We began to describe 10 years ago as the second shock of existence without first principles. So let's start. The first shock of existence is when humanity confronts, and anyone in the chat box who wants to complete a sentence, complete a word, Barbara, you're totally with us. We're holding hands. So anyone who wants to complete a sentence in the chat box, right, complete it. Thank you, Nathan. So what we're calling the first shock of existence is the experience of the dawn human being, the early human of death. But I actually confront my own death. And I've promised that we're going to spend through the summer several weeks talking about death, which is unbelievably important. There's been all this talk of dying during the corona pandemic that we're in the middle of, which is now at its height around the world. There's been no talk about death. What is the experience of death? What happens after death, right? The great traditions overreached and described what they didn't know, but dogmatic materialism underreaches. We actually know there's a continuity of consciousness after death. How do we know that? So we're going to actually open up this conversation in a deep, big way in our first principles section, 11 to 12, but we're not there yet. So let's just find first shock, the first shock of existence. Dawn man confronts death. Then we go through all the levels of consciousness, all the developmental levels of the human being, right? And we go stage to stage. You know that it's only 5,000 years ago that writing began? How many people knew that? Writing is only 5,000 years old. We go through, there's 10,000 generations of human beings, and each one, right, adds, right? Each one adds a link to the chain, right? Let's just open up for a second, right? So we go through all of the technological levels, from hunter-gatherer through early farming, horticultural with a handheld instrument, and then to agrarian, drawn by a horse or an oxen of various kind, and then we get ultimately, slowly through different stages of more advanced kinds of farming, right? Goes on for quite a long time till we finally get to early modernity. And we have this explosion in the Renaissance of the principles that birthed the Industrial Revolution. And then we get ultimately to this larger explosion of information revolution, and then, right, biotech and nanotech, and we're now at the dawn of artificial intelligence. That's the technological line of development. But there's also an interior line of development. And in the interior line of development, we move from clans, right, and their interior structures of consciousness, and then we move to the structures of consciousness of kingdoms, right? We move from tribes. Initially, we have clans, then we have tribes, and tribes are defined by blood, right? Bloodlines define tribes. Race defines tribes. And then we move beyond race and bloodlines, and beyond the racism implicit in them, and we move to empires, nations. And nations means that tribes are united. It's a great leap in the evolution of love. Does everyone understand that? Right? The Hutus don't kill the Tutsis because we're part of a nation, right? The tribal doesn't become my identification. Does everyone get that? Right now we've got this notion of empire, right? These larger sense of identity. But we also have this new emergence gradually in the Renaissance. As the empires expanded, it seeds ultimately what's going to become the Renaissance, which is the emergence of, right, there's actually one world, actually world-centric consciousness. We move from clan-centric to a kind of ethnocentric tribe to a kind of ethnocentric larger empire nation. Each one is more and more expanded ethnocentric circles of intimacy. All right, just give me a check in the chat box. How many people are tracking? I'm using language, which is internal language, right? Structures of Dharma. Is anyone not tracking something? If you don't understand, if anyone doesn't understand a sentence, right, just write in the chat box, lost that, okay? Right, I lost that, didn't get that. Explain that phrase, okay? That'll keep us together. Can we rely on that? Is that a deal, everybody? Okay, so if you miss something, just say, okay, got it, fantastic, okay? So now we move towards this emergence of universal human rights, this new understanding of the human being, right? The scientific method, right? This all explodes into reality. For the first time, we can actually extrapolate universals from particulars. It's not just particular nations, which are expanded tribes merged together in a nation, and then each nation says, I'm the best. Each religion says, I'm the best, and I've got to destroy the other ones, right? I mean, that notion of thinking goes on pretty much to World War I. But already in the Renaissance, the seeds of overcoming that are planted. The seeds of universal human rights are planted, right? And although it takes time, it takes till after World War I and then really after World War II to fully move beyond it, but there's the gradual emergence of world-centric intimacy, right? The gradual emergence of a sense of universal human rights, the emergence of the feminine. Slavery is abolished, right? At least so it seems. There's this enormous move forward, right? There's a League of Nations, there's a United Nations, right? There's these early steps, but they're based on, now let's stay close now, okay? They're based on very limited first principles. And the next piece I'm going to do is primarily for everybody, but I'm a little present for my friend Tom Ronayne, who's having a long day. Okay? So stay close here, guys, okay? Stay close. So what's the interior technology, right, that's moving the world from the Renaissance till today, essentially? What's the big momentous leap, right? In this evolutionary story, this new emergence, what's the interior emergence of, stay close, of the Renaissance? Anyone? What's the interior emergence? It's one and it's simple, right? That David, rock on, separate self. What does separate self mean? Now let's do this together. Let's get first principles. We're going to go deep into this first principle because it's everything. It's everything. So the first principle is separate self, meaning I'm not defined by my tribe. I'm not defined by my race. I'm not defined even by my nation, right? There's a notion of individuation, meaning Nathan has irreducible value and dignity as Nathan, right? Individuality. So this is the notion of separate self, and it's the dignity of separate self. I wouldn't quite call it, Joey, I'm going to play with you for a second, not quite self-awareness, because the awareness of a self is much, much earlier, right? It's separate self-awareness. It's the awareness of the dignity of separate self, right? And from the dignity of separate self comes this emergent freedom. Excuse me. Try not to die in the middle. Right? Comes this emergent freedom, comes this emergent dignity. Because that's the great momentous leap forward. Now, what does it leave behind? So it leaves behind two things. One is it leaves behind in the pre-modern period, one, the realization that the great traditions had of true self. Stay with us. I mean, the great traditions at their most advanced, this wasn't the popular realization. I want you to get that clear. This was the esoteric realization at the leading edges, was this realization that actually I'm one with the field of consciousness. Let's call that true self. Right? The singular, says Erwin Schrödinger, right? The quantum physicist who's describing the true self-realization. He describes it as the knowing of one mind, right? The singular that has no plural, right? The total number of true selves in the world is one, and I'm one with the field of consciousness. So, excuse me, that realization is lost. Stay slow, okay? Separate self emerges with this new dignity, and the pre-modern traditions got lost, right? In other words, they were still there, they were still practiced, they were still at play, but at the center of the leading edge of consciousness, there was the sense that the individual human reason and human rationality, in the sense of reason per se, right, could actually dominate. And the dualism of the 17th century, spirit and matter, matter is dead and inert, spirit's alive, the dualism gave way to materialism. So the top half, the top story of dualism, meaning spirit, got lopped off. God was declared dead because God was caricatured, right, as the God on a throne in the sky who created the world via fiat, the ex machina, right? That God was killed. Right? But people didn't realize that God's actually so much deeper and more than that. People killed a caricature of God. And what we had left was a materialism, right? Meaning dead, inert matter. And we're separate selves. We have dignity, but now we're not quite sure why we have dignity. The dignity started to be contrived, especially as the false neo-Darwinist dogmatic claim was made that we're just a random aggregation of particles, that reality has no purpose or telos, it's not going anywhere, and that to even talk about telos is heresy. Now again, that's what science became. And science was doing something noble. Not that science was bad. Science was doing something incredibly noble and beautiful. Science was trying to liberate the ability to know from the shackles, right, of the great religions that actually told Galileo, this is what you see through your telescope, not what you think you see. So religion actually crushed the endeavor of human knowing outside of the realms of dogma. That was religion's great shadow. At its very leading edge, religion was beautiful, and that developed the consciousness of true self. It developed the consciousness of knowing this oneness with the field of consciousness. But an exoteric public religion crushed knowing. So science wanted to liberate knowing with the scientific method from the shackles, the suffocating horror and cruelties of religion. So science liberates itself, right, out of any connection. Science differentiates from spirit, but then that differentiation becomes a dissociation, right? It becomes a complete dissociation from spirit. The separation of the value spheres of, let's say, religion, right, from, let's say, science, from interior morals, that separation became a dissociation. Does everyone get that? How many people track that? How many people are tracking? Just give me a tracking. Check in with me for a second. Who's tracking? This is it. This first principle. We got to understand what's happening here. right? We got to understand, we got to get this, okay? So now we have a separate self, but the separate self that began with this innate dignity, this innate assumption that the separate self was part of a larger field, was lost. The separate self became desiccated. The separate self became kind of like a dangling modifier in a sentence of spirit that was erased. Right? So the separate self begins as an adjective and as a verb in a sentence of spirit in a universe. Universe, a sentence of spirit, a verse which was one universe, one love, one heart. And then the separate self became a dignified expression of that. Was a natural intuition, but it was never expressed. It was a given. But then, right, as we started to talk about dualism, we said that material was inert, dead, and only spirit was real, and spirit lived in the human being. But then the vision of spirit God got slaughtered because that vision of spirit God was too connected to pre-modern superstition and, as Voltaire said, cruelties. So we were left with a denuded dualism. We just had its bottom half. What's the bottom half of dualism by itself? Materialism. Does everyone get that? If you knock off the top half of dualism, what do you get? Materialism. That's all you get. Dogmatic materialism, which now dominates science. Science is afraid to say anything else. So what gradually happens is science becomes as dogmatic as the religion that it rebelled against. Does everyone understand that? Very often there's a revolution, and then the revolution becomes more oppressive than those people you're rebelling against. Does everyone get that in politics? Who's getting this? Who's getting this? Give me some yeses. Give me some energy. Let's exchange energy here. Let's be together, okay? Let's be together, okay? I want to make sure let's land these first principles. So now we have a separate self. Now we've got the separate self. It's the 19th century, but the separate self is a desiccated separate self. It's what's called by the poet Yeats, right, in The Wasteland. It's right. It's the hollow men and the stuffed men, paralyzed, gesture without motion, right? Wow. Does everyone get that? Right? The best, right, are limp, right? And the worst are filled with passion and intensity. The best lack all conviction. The worst are full of passion and intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand, right? Writes the poet. Right? So we've got the separate self, which is this new emergent story of modernity, right? The dignity, but the dignity of the separate self has been undermined, denuded, right? We just have this desiccated separate self, this dangling modifier, right? In a sentence that's been erased, in a universe that's no longer a verse in this larger text. Does everyone get it? So now, stay close. Tom, this is for you now. So now, I'm going to jump into kind of the American, Western European, democracies right around the world. This new teaching begins to emerge, right? The old pre-modern teaching of the East, the teaching of enlightenment, begins to emerge again. There's a revivification, and Vivekananda, Swami Vivekananda at the Great World's Fair, right, back in 1896 was part of this revivification. There's this reconnecting through a whole series of moves, right, of this true self tradition finds its way back into the Western world, right? And Aldous Huxley, who wrote Brave New World, right, writes a book called Perennial Philosophy, right, which is about this tradition of true self. And people like, right, let's say in the modern American context, my colleague and dear friend Ken Wilber picks up meditation along with dozens and dozens of other teachers, right? For example, one of Ken's original teachers, Rudy Rudrananda, was also the teacher of my dear friend Swami Chaitanananda, right? And right, there's this entire explosion. Muktananda teaches, right? Then you've got a wilder versions of it with other teachers, but you've got this explosion of true self all over the democratic world. Right? Everyone's exploding, and then it begins to move into places like Russia. It's all over the world, true self. And true self becomes, and it's not quite Indian philosophy, it's mysticism. And it's the mysticism of the East and the West. So it's Hasidism in the West, right? It's, right, dimensions of Steiner, right, in the West. So and yes, as Sally absolutely correctly writes in the chat box, it's also Indian philosophy. So Indian philosophy is provocative, but it actually raises the entire deep mystical tradition, East and West, right, which is the true self tradition. Does everyone get that? Right? It's this true self tradition that's very strong, for example, in Hasidism. There's a book by Rivka Schatz called, in Hebrew, it's Hasidut Chemistica. In English, it's everyone should read it. It's Hasidism as Quietism. The first 3 chapters are about this true self tradition at the core of the Hasidic tradition. It's one of the major moves, okay? So read Steiner. It's very important in Steiner. It's very important in a lot of places. But as Sally correctly writes, it's the move of India towards the West actually provoked the West into reaccessing its own mystical traditions that it had put to the side. All of a sudden, Meister Eckhart becomes back in style, right? Who's a Christian mystic, but who's also a true self mystic. So true self mysticism begins to dominate the field. Does everyone get this? So enlightenment, this is my friend Tom, enlightenment becomes, now stay really close. So the first principle of enlightenment begins to dominate, right? People like Richard Alpert, young Jewish kid, right, from Boston, whose dad was the head of the local Jewish organization, right, changes his name to Ramdas. Another guy named Jeffrey Miller, right, changes his name, right? And you got Surya Das and Ramdas and Krishna Das, all Jewish boys, the Das brothers, right, who all went east, hung out either with Neem Karoli Baba or other of the, and then Jack Kornfeld and then Sharon Salzberg and Joseph Goldstein. There's a whole gang, and Danny Goleman, and there's a whole gang, right, who kind of write, and they're beautiful. And Ramdas and I loved each other. And we spent, one incredible 9 days together. And then we met. He came to meet me in LA. And we spent this incredible day together. And I shared with him what I'm about to share with you. Okay? Right? This re-embrace of true self starts before the 60s. It gets popular. David asks in the chat box. It's popular in the 60s, but it starts actually at the turn of the century. The turn of the 20th century. That's where it starts. It really starts like 1900. Where it starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger. It's rooted in theosophy also, Madame Blavatsky. Right? There's a number of the transcendentalists are very important. Wordsworth, right? That whole gang, right? Walt Whitman, super important. Right? There's multiple influences, and those influences, right, come together and they explode. Right? Alice Bailey Gurdjieff are part of that. That's absolutely right, Claire. Right? They explode. Right? This true self vision. Right, into the West. Does everyone get this? Everyone gets the frame? So I'm deep, my original lineage is Hasidism. Right, is the Hebrew lineage Kabbalah wisdom. And in Hasidism, of course, there's a strong true self tradition. But as I'm studying the true self tradition in Hasidism, and as I'm kind of expanding and studying, the 3 wheels of Buddhism, right? Theravada and Mahayana and Vajrayana, and I was exposed to Kashmir Shaivism through a number of people, right, which is completely gorgeous, and to particular worlds, right, that Ken Wilber and I talked about, that Ken brought me into in beautiful ways, and then readings in philosophy all across the board, particularly Fichte and Schelling, in terms of their visions of true self. And so I'm kind of reading, and my body says no. Right, my body says this is not enlightenment. This is beautiful, this is true, but it's limited. And I start talking to people about it, and I talk to kind of, colleagues who are, I won't mention the names, but are each one of them the leading names today in the kind of enlightenment world. And I just say, no, this is not quite right. Right, this is true, but it's not right. My body tells me it's not true. And so they say to me, that's your lack of realization, that's your ego hijacking it. You don't want to give up your ego. And the talk is about the impersonal. And my friend Andrew, right, talks about the impersonal, right? The impersonal, you got to move beyond separate self. Separate self is the personal. Everyone with me? Separate self is the personal. You got to move beyond, right, the personal to the impersonal. And my friend Andrew, who did all of his dialogues with Ken, calls his organization the Impersonal Enlightenment Fellowship, right? That's right. And he starts a magazine, What is Enlightenment? Or Enlighten Next, which becomes pretty much the center, right, of the enlightenment conversation in much of the United States and around the world. And it's all about true self. It's all about true self, or it's the creative expression of true self. True self is creative, which they call authentic self, but it's impersonal. It's impersonal, okay? And let's go even clearer, like Andrew writes a book. And in this book, and Kirsten, if you can get ready to link to the book Self, that'd be awesome. In this book, that was a little parentheses, right? In this book, right, Andrew uses the word personal about 47, 48 times. And each time he uses the word personal, it's a pejorative, it's a negative. But it's not just Andrew. It's not just my friend Andrew, who I love dearly. We just spoke on the phone a couple of days ago, right? Right? And he's gone through a complicated few years, and he's really emerged and and taking a next step, and mad blessings to them, right? But it's not just, it's the entire system, right? Ken Wilber describes in all of his early books true self and views, right, that as the penultimate accomplishment, the penultimate realization. And just my body knew that that's just not right. That's not right. And so I went deeper and deeper in, right, to the lineage, and deeper into my body, and deeper into what the personal is. And I prayed and screamed and fought and yelled and argued and practiced. And I began to realize and to formulate clearly, emergent from the lineages of Kabbalah, but also emergent from, enormous amount of the sciences, right? And how the sciences define reality, right? That actually we start with the personality, the personal of the personality. We get to the impersonal. This is how we get to first principles. We get to the impersonal, and the impersonal is true self. So we go from separate self to true self, right? You with me? So we got to leave behind that separate self that in the Renaissance became the center of everything, right? Actually, the great traditions weren't wrong, right? If I'm just the separate self of the Renaissance, right, the dignified individual, then actually that dignified individual, right, when you cut out spirit, becomes the hollow men and the stuffed men. So we got to go back and reclaim true self. That's absolutely true. But what the West did is the West went and reclaimed true self and left separate self behind. You get that? So the entire movement of enlightenment actually reclaimed true self, but left the separate self that the Western enlightenment had put forward behind. So I'm gonna get there. I want you to get the words carefully. So the classical enlightenment traditions, mystical enlightenment traditions, East and West, left the separate self behind. But the separate self was the product of what we might call the Western enlightenment, not the mystical traditions East and West. I'm calling those the Eastern enlightenment, but it's really the mystical traditions East and West. But the Western enlightenment, right, which starts in the Renaissance and goes to the Great Western Enlightenment, the Western Enlightenment puts in the center the separate self and says, this is the dignity of the separate self. So when we reclaim true self in consciousness, in Western consciousness, we left that separate self behind. The separate self was supposed to die on the cushion. That's what the teachers taught. Pretty much across the board, every place. Right? The notion that the separate self had dignity was lost. Right? You got to be in the relative, you've got to use your relative, right, self, which is the term they used for separate self to navigate reality. But basically, the relative is just the relative. It's the absolute where it lives, and the absolute is true self. And I knew that wasn't true. I knew that was a mistake. And pretty much people laughed. One person who's a very well-known teacher today said, what Mark is doing is a desecration of the Dharma. And people were furious. I mean, furious. But you got to stay loyal to Shi. You got to stay loyal to realization. And gradually I was able to articulate the following. First principles. And this is actually what enlightenment means. That actually we start with separate self. That's beautiful, right? The separate self of the Western Enlightenment is really important. Because the separate self of the Western Enlightenment is about moving beyond suffering. Everyone with me? Who's with me? Who's with me here, okay? So let's stay really close here, okay? Let's stay really close, okay? We're not going to go that much longer, but let's get this first principle. We're about to land. The separate self of the Western Enlightenment, the separate self of the Western Enlightenment, is everyone getting this? The separate self of the Western Enlightenment, which is the dignity of the individual, which originally the Western Enlightenment just innately placed in a larger frame and a larger script of a universe, but later got desiccated when dualism, spirit and body, became only materialism. And so that separate self became a desiccated hollow men and stuffed men, right, of the poet. But originally, this original healthy separate self is actually important because the separate self is about moving beyond suffering. But then we need true self, right? We were right about that. The movement of consciousness was right. We need to bring true self back because true self is also about moving beyond suffering. You get that? And just stay really close. So the Western Enlightenment says, to move beyond suffering, you need to reify, right? You need to place at the center the dignified separate self human being. But the mystical enlightenment, both East and West, but it's usually identified as Eastern Enlightenment, says, no, to move beyond suffering, you got to get rid of your separate self. You got to get rid of your separate self and only realize yourself as true self. Die on the cushion. Your separate self has to die on the cushion. So everyone see what happened? There's this huge contradiction. You've got mystical Eastern Enlightenment, which expressions of it in both East and the West, which say to move beyond suffering, to heal yourself, and then to heal reality, your narrative of identity has to be true self. Separate self is an illusion. But then you have the Western Enlightenment, the actual Western Enlightenment, what's called in history Western Enlightenment, like the Renaissance through the Industrial Revolution and right, the French Enlightenment. That's all called the Western Enlightenment, which says, no, no, you got to not define yourself in terms of larger contexts. You have independent, irreducible dignity. That's separate self, and only that will take you beyond suffering. So now we have two things that are called enlightenment: mystical Eastern Enlightenment, as it appears East and West, and Western Enlightenment, and they both completely oppose each other. That's where we were, and that's what kept me awake night and day. Because with that contradiction at the heart of culture, we don't have a shared first principle, we don't have a sense of identity, and I understood it's going to destroy culture. And so I prayed and practiced and began to realize the following. And that's what the Unique Self book's about, and that's what the book that Kirsten, maybe you can repost it, right? That's what the book that Kirsten just posted, which is called Self and Integral Evolutionary Mysticism, is about. Began to realize the following, and now we're about to get to a critical first principle that changes reality. And my colleague, who's been also my student and my friend, and now is co-president of the center, right? And you know, Zach Stein, right, who's kind of, you know, has taken this idea and taken it into education, right? And Kirsten's taken it into, you know, world spirituality articles we've worked on together. And Claire is actually creating an entire institute around this, right? And it's at the core of, right, with Christina, our Outrageous Love and Eros project. So let's get what it's at the core of our festival. Let's get what it is. And this is the whole deal. Actually, we need to disambiguate, to separate, to distinguish between separateness and uniqueness. Okay, right? Separateness and uniqueness. And Nathan, find Claire to talk about the Institute, right? We need to distinguish between separateness and uniqueness. And by the way, for those of you who are listening to the recording, I often say a little asides because there's a conversation taking place with people in the chat box at the same time, which is the advantage of listening live. So I apologize for those asides. Okay, that's what those asides are. If you're listening, that's where they're coming from. Okay, so here's the distinction. We have to distinguish between separateness and uniqueness. See, both the Eastern mystical enlightenment and the Western enlightenment, right? The Western Industrial Revolution, French Renaissance enlightenment, both confused separateness and uniqueness. And that created this huge set of mistakes that can actually destroy culture. They're actually the source of our win-lose metrics with its extraction model and exponential growth and its self-terminating nature that will destroy us with existential risk. We actually have to distinguish between separateness and uniqueness. See, the Western Enlightenment, right, the individual of the Renaissance said, oh, you've got to be separate self. You got to be separate self. That's what you got to be. Because separate self is the source of dignity. And they got rid of true self. That's a mistake. That's not true. You actually can be not separate self. You can actually be unique self. And what's unique self? Unique self includes all of you. None of you is left out. It's not impersonal enlightenment. It's what we called back in 2003 or 2 personal enlightenment. All of me is included, and particularly my uniqueness is included. And my uniqueness is not my separateness. Now, I'm a unique self, meaning I'm not separate self. Like the Western Enlightenment got it wrong. It said we need to be a separate self to have dignity. No, I can actually realize I'm part of the field of true self. I'm one with the field. I'm one with the field of consciousness. And I can actually realize, as we added later, I'm one with the field of consciousness and eros and desire. But for now, I'm one with the field of consciousness. But that field of consciousness, that seamless code of the universe, is seamless, but it's not featureless. And I'm its unique feature. I'm a unique expression of the entire field. Or to put it in evolutionary terms, I'm a unique emergent of the entire field, right? So to be unique self means I'm not merely a desiccated separate self. I've actually reclaimed the field of true self, right? But not as a dogma, as the result of the best experiments in all the interior sciences that you can actually access directly. If you do the experiment yourself, you'll actually realize that you actually are consciousness beneath your personality. You can actually access that dimension of yourself in many ways. So I'm part of the field of true self, but I'm an irreducible, unique expression of that field. I'm unique self. So that's the correction of the mistake of Western Enlightenment. But now we got to correct the mistake of, ready? Got to correct the mistake of what? You got to correct the mistake of what? You with us? Got to correct the mistake of Eastern Enlightenment. How do we correct that? Eastern Enlightenment said, right, you got to be true self, and therefore you got to give up separation. But Eastern Enlightenment confused separation and uniqueness. So text after text after text, from popular Eastern Enlightenment texts like the Course in Miracles, or particularly, people like Marion Williamson who were expressing the Course in Miracles, right? Or like, lots of texts in all over the American spiritual community, all conflated separateness and uniqueness, and many ancient texts conflated separateness and uniqueness. And I collected lots and lots of those texts, ancient and modern. That's a mistake. No, you've got to disambiguate. You've got to separate separateness and uniqueness. No, I'm not separate self. I'm true self. But true self doesn't obliterate my uniqueness. I'm a unique expression of true self. And actually, there is no true self any place in the manifest world. Every true self is a unique self. You get that? Wow. So now unique self becomes the core structure. That's a first principle. Then, jump with me for a second. But then I realized, no, that unique self is in an evolutionary context. There's a larger evolutionary context at play. You with us? Who's with us? You got it? We're just about finished. Okay, we're in the stretch. You with us? Who's with us? Okay, there's a larger evolutionary context at play. I'm not just unique self. I am evolutionary unique self. Right? Actually, evolution is my first person. I am the first person of evolution. I realize I am evolution. I am uniquely evolution. I am the personal face of the evolutionary impulse beating in me, as me, and through me. Does everyone get that? So now we've added this evolutionary unique self. But that's not enough. That's not enough. Stay with us. But what's the interior experience of the evolutionary impulse? What's the interior experience of the field of consciousness? What does the field of consciousness feel like? And that's how we started today at the very, very beginning of our conversation, right? Not in part 2, which you're now in right now, but in part 1, when we said, the first sentence we said was, the universe feels, and the universe feels love. Not ordinary love, not love just between two separate self-human beings as expressed in the Renaissance, which then got devolved into a desiccated separate self of the hollow men and the stuffed men. Not ordinary love, which is a strategy of ego, right? Or a way to get status and security, which are all legitimate, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about outrageous love. And outrageous love, right? The eros that animates the cosmos. You begin to realize that field of consciousness of true self is not just a field of consciousness. That's a mistake. It's not just awareness. It's not just awareness of awareness. That's not going to take you home. It's not just awareness of awareness. Rupert Spira, love you madly, brother. It's not going to take you home, right? You actually have to realize that the interior quality of the field is eros, is outrageous love. It is ananda, right? And when I say I am evolution, I mean I'm a unique configuration of outrageous love. Outrageous love is the animating eros of the evolutionary impulse. I'm a unique configuration of that animating eros of the evolutionary impulse, which is moving towards, because now we've added evolution. Everyone get that? We've added evolution on the unique self. It's the next level, which is moving towards the evolution of intimacy, the evolution of love. Right? So I'm a unique expression of the evolutionary impulse that's moving towards the evolution of love. And as such, I realize outrageous love moves through me. And that's where Krista comes in, right? And Krista's holding this page that Dr. Christina Kincaid and I, right, kind of birthed together into the world in 2014, which is that who am I? I'm an outrageous lover, but that's not cute. That's Dharma. Right? That's a first principle. I'm a unique configuration of outrageous love. And as a unique configuration of outrageous love, right, I have outrageous acts of love to commit, right? And so Christina Kincaid, as we put up our new website for Many Paths, One Mountain, led a battle to make sure that we've got an outrageous act of love page on it so that we can actually all, every week, right, actually realize, access that first principle. I'm a unique self. I'm a unique self in an evolutionary context. I'm the unique expression of true self. That's who I am, right? I'm the unique expression of true self, right? I'm the unique expression of true self in an evolutionary context. It means I'm evolutionary unique self. And as evolutionary unique self, who am I? I'm homo amor. I called Barbara one evening and said, let's call it homo amor universalis. Barbara used to talk about homo universalis. And I talked about homo amor. So we put it together for a time. I called Barbara right before church, let's call it homo amor universalis. And then we agreed to kind of come back and call it just simply homo amor, meaning I am amor love, but we've ontologized love. So love is actually my core identity. And my core identity is love, right? But not ordinary love, right? Not romantic love, although romantic love might be an expression of outrageous love. But my core identity is the actual quality of outrageous love, which is personal. Now back to Roné and my brother Tom. Let's get this clearly. So level 1 is personality, separate self. Level 2 is the impersonal, right? The impersonal, true self. Level 3 is the personal beyond the impersonal, right? And together with, right, my dear colleague and gorgeous integral philosopher, Ken Wilber, Ken and I argued about this material and went back and forth in 2002 and 2003 and 2004. And ultimately, I then wrote a 1,500 pages about this lineage, right? Where this lineage comes from as an enlightenment lineage. And Ken beautifully read the whole 1,500 pages in a couple of nights and wrote me back, okay, I got it. I got it, man. I got it. He was in. He said, this is a critical new enlightenment lineage we got to integrate in the integral world. And I wrote the Unique Self book in 2009. But actually, back in 2004, 5, right, actually began to present this in the world. And Ken actually gathered, like 2005, this group of teachers at something that was then called the Integral Spiritual Center. And I was just delighted and honored. He asked me to present to this group, 60, 70, 80 teachers, present this new enlightenment lineage called Unique Self. And our colleague Genpo Roshi was there, and his students, and Dan Hamilton was there, it's fantastic, and Sally Kempton was there, and you know, younger integral people there, Sean Hargens and Terry Patton were there, and Lama Surya Das was there, and just a whole host of people from the lineages around the world. And everyone's like, what is this? There was enormous, right, you know, opposition to it in the one sense and recognition in the other. And Ken really kind of loved it, and it was gorgeous. And then everyone began to get on board, right? Roger Walsh was there, says Shahat. And then, you know, just 2 years later, right? And I called it Unique Self. And Unique Self was a word that had already existed in a book I'd written called Soul Prints. But Ken and I talked about it, and we said, let's take that word. Ken said, let's take your Unique Self word and make that central. We did. And then a little short time later, right? Terry wrote a book that had a chapter on Unique Self. And he was gracious enough to recognize how we sourced it, right? And Genpo Roshi wrote a book, and it had a chapter called Unique Self. This is now 2006, 7. And it's right about that time that, right, so we actually put into culture, we actually changed something together in the sort of consciousness, and the entire enlightenment community around the world, this began to spread. This began to spread. Andrew and I still argued about it. Andrew Cohen and I still had major, huge, public, knockdown, right, kind of debates on it. In the end, the Journal of Integral Theory and Practice in 2011, I edited a journal, right, all around this notion of unique self, which became a new chapter, right? A new chapter every place, everywhere, right? In an integral theory, but it's not limited. This is not an integral theory issue. Integral theory is gorgeous, but this is a unique self. It's unique self theory. It's part of a broader cosmoerotic humanism. It's unique self theory. There's an integral scaffolding. Integral is meant, as Ken set it up, as a scaffolding. Those of you who know integral theory, if you don't, bracket it, skip it. But it's very important for those of you. It's very, very important. I've sent a lot of people to integral theory. But unique self is the expression of this new emergent moment of consciousness. It's unique self, which is evolutionary unique self, which is homo amor. Okay, that's what we mean by homo amor. Homo amor is the realization that I'm a unique expression of the love intelligence and love beauty. And now you begin to see how this comes together, right? In other words, unique self, evolutionary unique self, homo amor, becomes, right, the fulfillment of the whole story. Okay, and I'm just going to go 2 more steps and we're going to finish. So we really get this. We really get this. So actually, in the evolution of love, right, unique self is the next stage in the evolution of love. You actually get the storyline. You get that there's a narrative arc to cosmos, which is by itself a great realization. Science doesn't see a narrative arc. Well, science does. Scientism, the dogmas of science don't. There's a narrative arc. Cosmos moves from matter, right, to life, to mind, right? Matter, right, in what people call inanimate matter, but it's not inanimate. It's sentient. It's alive, right? That's not materialism and dualism. Matter itself is inherently creative. And then matter moves through all the stages, right? From the first nanoseconds of the Big Bang, from quarks, right? Subatomic particles to atoms, differentiate as atoms, differentiate into molecules, then into macromolecules that then intensify their intimacy and awaken as cells, and then to multicellular structures and to organisms and organs, and all the way up, plants, fish, amphibians, right? Later, right? Early animals, later animals, right? Neural net, neural cord, up to hominids walking on the savannah. That's all life. So it's matter and the explosion of life. So matter is the physiosphere. That's the first Big Bang. Now stay close. Then the first Big Bang, right? Matter, the first Big Bang, right? The first Big Bang fulfills itself in life. So matter fulfills itself in life. The triumph of matter is life. Does everyone get that's a new sentence? That's a huge sentence. We've got to spend an entire 5 hours on this, but we're just going to do it in a minute. The triumph of matter is life. Matter triumphs and becomes life. Then life goes through all of its stages, which I just described cursorily in a second. And life goes through all of its stages until we get to hominids walking on the savannah. That's the biosphere. So the physiosphere, the first Big Bang, triumphs in the second Big Bang. And the second Big Bang is life, the biosphere. Then you go through all the levels of the biosphere. Then the biosphere of life triumphs in the human being, the hominids on the savannah. At some point, right, there's this explosion, this momentous third Big Bang, right? The noosphere, the mind, the self-reflective mind is born. Matter triumphs in life. Life, right, triumphs in, everyone got this? Life triumphs in, right, mind, self-reflective mind, right? That is, stay close, right? That's the third Big Bang. Now stay really close now. This is the point. Then we go through all the stages in the gorgeous of the third Big Bang, through all the developmental stages of human history that we described in the beginning of this conversation. And then we get to a new set of first principles. We integrate pre-modern along all the wisdom streams, the pre-modern validated insights of all the wisdom streams, together with the modern validated insights of all the wisdom streams, together with the postmodern validated insights of all the wisdom streams. They come together, and there's a fourth Big Bang. And the fourth Big Bang is unique self. And as the triumph of the self-reflective human is homo amor. Now, if you don't faint in rapture and ecstasy at the beauty of the elegance, the gorgeousness, right, of what this human story is, this is the new universe story. This is the new Dharma. These are the new first principles. The new first principle is the fourth Big Bang. In other words, in the third Big Bang, we got as far as separate self. And separate self got us beyond, right, to birth the dignities of modernity, but separate self dissociated from true self. And then true self took the stage. So we just had this conflict between Eastern and Western enlightenment, right? Western enlightenment, separate self, dignity of the individual. Anything that effaces that is a cult, and let's get rid of those bad people. But actually, that's not true. Cults are pre-personal. There's actually a transpersonal option. There's a personal beyond the impersonal, and that actually is unique self. So unique self corrects the fracture in the misunderstanding of separate self. It says separate self actually has to emerge and reclaim its ground as true self. We're part of the field of consciousness, but that field of consciousness is not just consciousness, it's eros, it's outrageous love, it's desire. I'm part of the field of eros, outrageous love and desire, but I'm a unique expression of that field. Right? That's the fourth Big Bang. When I begin to actually experience myself, as a unique expression, not as a theory, but in my first person lived identity, I'm a unique configuration of that field, right? Then the third Big Bang has triumphed, right? Mind has triumphed into homo amor, right? Right? That's the omega point. That's where we're going. That's a fourth Big Bang. That's what we've dedicated our lives to, because it's only the emergence of a new human and a new humanity that can actually generate, right, the response to existential risk into the second shock of existence. Does everyone get that? Right? And so then around 2007, this starts kind of 6, 7, starts seeping into the world, little pieces of it. But each one is a little piece, right? So some people will get the notion that, okay, that uniqueness is part of it, but they'll lose the evolutionary impulse. And other people will get the evolutionary piece, but lose uniqueness. And so in 2009, I actually wrote the Unique Self book to kind of get this straight, but now we got to issue a new version of the Unique Self book 10 years later to actually integrate all the pieces, right, as unique self theory. But unique self theory is not an abstract theory, it's the new story, right? I am homo amor. I am homo amor. I am the new human, and homo amor is not just an individual human being, it's the new humanity, right? And so amor is outrageous love. And as homo amor, what do? Right? And that's what Lady Krista, who's our new lead executive producer, is holding the field of this, right? This outrageous love page within Many Paths, One Mountain. And we're going to launch ultimately, right, into an outrageous love project. Dr. Kincaid is directing and seeding this outrageous love project together with Stephanie and Ivan. And that's going to then be a sister of the Unique Self Institute, right? That's held by Claire and the festival, right? We're doing this huge festival, August. Shati maybe will put in the dates, this big Dharma festival. We're going deep into articulating new sets of first principles. That's actually coming up in August. But this is the revolution. We're part of this revolution, right? And so in this revolution, maybe we'll put in the link actually so people can actually see the link, right? We're part of this revolution, and this revolution is to actually, we are the revolution of the fourth Big Bang. Do you get that sentence? We are the revolution of the fourth Big Bang. That's us, right? And it's only the fourth Big Bang that can actually respond to existential risk. It's only the fourth Big Bang that can actually respond to artificial intelligence that obsoletes jobs and then obsoletes human identity as we know it. Without unique self, there's no game. Without unique self, there's no identity beyond my job. Without unique self, there's no reason why Thanos, right, shouldn't in the Avengers 2 movie wipe out, right, everybody and wipe out the future and just start it again, because there's no dignity to the irreducibly unique separate self. Right? Without the irreducibly unique separate self, there's all sorts of solutions to existential risk, which are tragic. But the irreducible dignity of the unique self, the irreducible dignity of the unique self, which is the separate self post true self. So the separate self, the ego self, is not wrong. It's not that you got to obliterate the ego. And it's not that you have to evolve beyond ego. There was all this talk about evolving beyond ego. Right? And the people that talk about evolving beyond ego are the most dangerous, because you can't call them on their ego because they deny it. Now, you never evolve beyond ego. You actually, your ego transmogrifies, transmutes into your unique self, right? Now, is there a danger of confusing unique self and ego? Of course there is, right? So you've got to point out the distinction. And in the Unique Self book, there's 25 distinctions between ego and unique self, right? Is there a danger of confusing true self-enlightenment with totalitarianism? Of course there is. We don't dismiss true self-enlightenment. We have to distinguish, right? Unique self is individuation beyond ego. Unique self is higher individuation beyond ego. Does everyone get that? Unique self is higher individuation beyond ego, which I'm a unique self, and then I participate in the unique self symphony, which is why our vision, our goal is a planetary awakening in love through unique self symphonies. Let's see if we can just write that down for a second, right? Our vision is a planetary awakening in love through unique self symphonies. Right? Does everyone get this? We come together as unique expressions of the self-actualizing cosmos. We're unique expressions of the self-organizing universe, right? Each one of us is a unique expression of the self-organizing universe, the self-actualizing cosmos, and we each have outrageous acts of love to commit. And then that is what it means to awaken as homo amor. That in my consciousness, and with this we end, I'm going to turn to Lady Krista, right? In the consciousness of homo amor, there's only one question, right? Right? It's not quite the who am I of true self, which is Ramana Maharshi's question, where the answer is I am, meaning I am, right? I'm the impersonal I am. I'm impersonal consciousness. Well, that's part of the ground, but that's insufficient. True self's insufficient. No, it's not just who am I, right? It's who am I and what's there to do, or a deeper answer to who am I. So here we go. What's the deepest answer? What's homo amor's answer? Which has got to become part of my first person consciousness, and we democratize enlightenment. We democratize greatness. And the democratization of enlightenment, right? It's got to be a kind of democratization of enlightenment where every person realizes in their first person, I'm a unique configuration of evolutionary love. I'm a unique configuration of the evolutionary impulse. So we end here. So now all of a sudden, the sentence that we quote every week or two, right, with everything we've done now, we've reestablished this first principle, begins to make sense, right? So what do we have? Separate self. Separate self is a puzzle piece, but everyone thinks, right, in the Western Enlightenment, there's no puzzle. There's just the individuated I. That's all there is. Puzzle piece, there's no puzzle. Doesn't work. We then bring true self back. There's only a puzzle, right? That's when we bring true self back into consciousness. And Western consciousness and into democratic world and all over the world, we bring it back and they say, no, 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 there is no separate self. There's just one puzzle, but it's all one. But you say, what about the line separating the puzzle pieces? And your enlightenment teacher tells you that's just an illusion. That's just an illusion. So they're both crazy making. When you're looking for the puzzle as separate self, and your teacher tells you there is no larger puzzle, right? That's the modern teaching of Hobbes, Locke, right? Right? It's crazy making, right? That's why we have mental breakdown all over the world, because we're told a lie that violates our interior. But then you go to true self, or we're told another lie or partial truth, which is just, there's just one, there's just the one of the puzzle. The line separating the puzzle pieces, that's an illusion. Then we actually deepen, we realize the fourth Big Bang, evolution, right? Unique self. And unique self is, oh, right, there's a puzzle piece, right? And the puzzle piece completes the puzzle. Oh my God. So I'm held, Phil, you're a puzzle piece. I'm held by the larger puzzle, and I complete the larger puzzle. And then I go to the last step, evolutionary unique self, and I'm a puzzle piece that evolves the whole puzzle, right? But that's me personally, right? My personal love story is part of the universal love story. I'm implicated in the evolutionary process. I'm personally implicated. But by personally, we don't mean the negative personal. We mean the personal beyond the impersonal. My story, my love story, is chapter and verse in the intimate universe, in the universal love story. It's a universe again. It's one eros and one love, and it's one heart again, but a one which is pluribus unum, right? It's the many that are the one, right? It's diversity and polarity, right? Together with unity at the same time, right? Right? It's individuation within union, right? The only mature individuation is in the context of the larger union. So now we end and we turn to Lady Krista. Here's the sentence, okay? Here's the sentence. Who are you? You are an irreducibly unique expression, right? Who are you? You are an irreducibly unique expression of the love intelligence and love beauty that is, right? That is the initiating and animating eros and energy of all that is, that lives in you, as you, and through you, that never was, is, or will be again in all eternity other than through you. And as such, you have an irreducibly unique perspective. As such, you have an irreducibly unique perspective. And as such, you're an irreducibly unique quality of intimacy. And your irreducibly unique perspective and your irreducibly unique quality of intimacy come together to foster your unique gift. And your unique gift is your very being. Your very beingness is your unique gift. And it's also the unique gift that you have a capacity to actually offer into. It's actually the activism, the unique activism that you have a capacity to offer into your unique circle of intimacy and influence, which means to actually access your deepest heart's desire, which is the field of desire uniquely expressed as you, and commit your outrageous acts of love. And your outrageous acts of love that are a function of your deepest heart's desire, which is the field of desire and consciousness uniquely expressed as you, that's actually you, the leading edge of evolution. You who manifested the whole thing, because where could you have been at the Big Bang other than right there? There was no place else to be. You started the whole thing. And our hands are linked in unique self-symphony. And each of us are committing outrageous acts of love. And each of us are standing together at the abyss of darkness and actually generating this fourth Big Bang, generating this unique self-symphony. Friends, it's that set of first principles that's going to take us beyond existential risk. It's that set of first principles that's going to take us beyond catastrophic risk. Right? It's that set of first principles that are going to actually heal suffering, right? Feed the hungry, right? Realize human potential, realize hope beyond imagination, realize beauty, goodness, and truth beyond imagination. Without those first principles, we'll fail. We'll fail. We'll fail. According to Toby Ord, right, over the next X amount of time, hundreds of years, he says we have he did all the deep mathematical work. He said we got a 1 in 2 chance of making it over the long term. Right? So let me tell you something. Without first principles, we got no chance. With first principles, we're going to take this all the way home and create a utopia on earth unlike that you can ever imagine. Because remember that first elementary particle at the moment of the Big Bang that took us from quarks to culture lives in you and lives in me and lives in us together. That same generativity, that same creativity, that same love, that same eros that took us from Bacteria to Bach, from mud to Mozart, from dirt to Shakespeare, right? That telos, that inherent telos of the ceaselessly creative cosmos lives in us. So just like that first elementary particle had within it the capacity to manifest all that's most gorgeous, true and good and beautiful, that elementary particle, all of them literally live in us. All of the interiors and exteriors live in us, exponentialized. So we are the face of the new divine, even as she holds us at the same time. Even as the field of God is beyond us, it lives through us. We are the leading edge, all of us together, right? And we together commit our outrageous acts of love. And we stand as, right, a planetary awakening in outrageous love through unique self symphonies. That's first principle. That's our basis. That's our foundation, right? That's where the revolution moves from. So let's breathe for a second. Yeah. Let's breathe for a second. Let's turn to Lady Krista. Right? Thank you for your patience, everyone. Thank you for our shared attention as we placed our attention, right, on the future, on this memory of the future. Right? This is the moment. This is the time. We're at a time between stories, at a time between worlds. And the time literally is now. Lady Krista, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mark. An evolution of love. And we are here together to participate in that. And we receive here from Mark, in one church, many paths, one mountain, the first principles, but we also need the first practices. And that is where the practice of committing outrageous acts of love comes in. But I want to thank everyone who is stepping in and committing to actually post an outrageous act of love every week on our Facebook page. And this is where we become a unique self-symphony, and our unique self-symphony becomes visible, and we connect all throughout the week, and we share it, we celebrate each other's greatness. So I'm just going to show with you what that Facebook page looks like. And there have been so many people sharing outrageous acts of love this week. It is right here. I'm just going to scroll through them, but please take a moment to look at that and read all of those amazing stories. David in the mountain, Claire creating a fundraiser, Christina sharing her beautiful arts of photography and poetry. And actually, our beloved Jamie is our top sharer here this week, creating beautiful, beautiful songs. So there are many, many, many posts, as you can see. And I invite all of you to step in and join our Unique Self Symphony here. You go to the Facebook page, you click here on the community tab. This is where all of you can post, and I will reshare all the posts so everybody also becomes visible here on the home page. And here's the one that I was looking for, the song that James actually recorded. He recorded a version of Amor, the chant that we sing every week here in church. Unfortunately, I cannot play this one, but Jamie, again, I invite you to record one and post it on YouTube so we can actually share it here in church. And each and every one of us is invited, if you feel called to it, if this is your unique expression of your unique self, to record your own version and contribute to church in that way. And of course, Marc Gafni is also posting every week a beautiful love story, a story of an outrageous act of love here. We have our beautiful website where you can step in and become a member. And I just want you to remember for a moment that story that Marc has shared in the beginning, that we are imagining a new future together. And that imagination that we did together of the leaders coming together and actually holding hands for a new future together, all of us are needed to create that new future. And so we invite you to become part of our community and actually make a contribution here. And you can do that by becoming a member. You can choose your own unique contribution. As you can see, it starts only from $25. So go to our website after church and sign up and become a member. And of course, we will give you so many gorgeous gifts. You will become part of our online community, and you get access to these 9 beautiful courses All of them contain hours and hours of transmission of the Dharma, of the first principles, of unique self, of outrageous love, of reclaiming eros, as you can see. Each and every course, the value is $297, but you can already gain access for only $25 a month. So that is an amazing gift, an amazing opportunity for you to join us there and study together. And you are also already invited, if you are not right now a member yet, you can join us also in our weekly gathering, which is every Monday at 11 a.m. Pacific time, which is 8 p.m. European time, where myself and Christina Emelong create a space to write together to the Evolutionary Love Code. So every week in church, we have the love code that David resonates so beautifully, which this week was about stepping into our greatness and confessing our greatness. And Monday in our online group, which is totally free and available for everybody, you can join us, and we are practicing there together and meeting each other and loving each other open. So I invite you to join us there. I will post my email address in the chat right now. And if you want to join me, please let me know and I will send you the information. Thank you so much for being with us here. And with that, I give my word back to you, Marc.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Beyond imagination, guys. This is beyond imagination, right? Give us how deep is your love, right? All the way, all the way. Just how deep is your love. Thank you, everyone. Let's come on and see each other, right? Christina Amelong's going to take us into how deep is your love, and let's just blow it open and feel it and see each other, and let's make this revolution. How deep is your love? Amen. Have a gorgeous week, everyone.